If the Supreme Court finds that the plaintiffs do have standing, then what? Then we're looking for a decision on the FDA's approval of Mifepristone?
Yeah, so we wouldn't be, so the questions presented are whether or not, the second question presented besides the standing issue is whether or not we should roll back mifepristone to the 2016 risk evaluation and mitigation strategies, the REMS requirements. There are 7 drugs on the market now with REMS requirements. It is very, very rare, and they're typically reserved for drugs that have a high chance of addictiveness, which obviously mifepristone isn't a drug that one becomes addicted to. So what would happen is this drug would not be taken off the market entirely, most likely. However, we go back to 2016. And in the 2016 REMS, there is a 3 in-person visitation requirement. And that would essentially prevent telehealth for medication abortion from happening. And that would be hugely, hugely disrupted, especially from an equity perspective, where medication abortion through telehealth is able to reach rural populations. It is able to reach populations in abortion care deserts, maternal health care deserts, which there are only increasing numbers of in this country. And it would really just be a devastating impact to not only, abortion seekers, but the healthcare industry generally. Since the pandemic, telehealth has really boomed. And at a state level and at a federal level, we are seeing increasing permissions for telehealth use. And to take that away for mifepristone, when once again it is 97% safe and effective. It should be over the counter in the first place based on those safety and efficacy ratings, right? Like, to take that away is going to have a huge detrimental impact all over the country, even in states where they're blue states like New York. I'm sitting in Brooklyn right now. I will be impacted. Everybody in this state will be impacted. And I think it's a really, really important point to get across, because so often people in coastal cities, people in blue states aren't tuned into these conversations because these issues don't impact us in the same way because our states protect us. But this is federal. Everyone will be impacted.
We also saw this month the introduction of over-the-counter birth control in certain states, including New York. Is there a world or scenario in which this mifepristone case then dampens the ability to get over-the-counter birth control?
It's a great question. Well, I think let's go back to the conversation we started to have on Comstock, because that's where this becomes relevant. So, just to turn back the hands of time for a moment, the Comstock Act, as you said, is a 19th century law that is an anti-vice law. And actually, I think the language is it bans lewd, lascivious, and obscene information from going through the mail. I mean, like lascivious, I'm sure that half of the judges here don't even know what that word means. But so what we're talking about here is a ban on mailing abortifacients. Again, a word that feels so arcane, and all vice. So that also includes contraception, right? Like contraceptives. And if, Thomas and Alito have their way and Comstock is back on the table, then yeah, there's a chance where contraceptives are no longer able to be sent in the mail. And I want to be clear that even if Comstock isn't, given the thumbs up in this case, if it's dropped on standing, it is a dormant federal law that hasn't been enforced in over 100 years, but it is still on the books. So really what's needed is a repeal of Comstock. And it felt absurd to even repeal this law because it's irrelevant, and it has been irrelevant. It hasn't been enforced in 100 years. But now it's a main talking point of the extreme right and the conservative movement to say, hey, if we get back in power, we are going to enforce Comstock. So we are really hopeful, and Representative Cori Bush is actually the first elected official as of yesterday to demand that we repeal Comstock, because again, if Trump is elected in office, we can live in a world, regardless of this case, where the mailing of contraception is now prohibited. And also, it's not just the mailing to patients, it's going in the mail in general. So I'm talking about like from pharmaceutical companies and distributors sending it in the mail to doctors, to hospitals, like no mailing at all. It's really absurd.